Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video. Wishing you all good health and peace. The dawn slipped over the mountains, its light a soft veil spilling through mist that cradled the hills like a whispered prayer. Lytuca stirred, her breath a faint cloud in the morning's chill. As roosters crowed, their calls sharp against the hush of a world waking. She stepped lightly, her bare feet brushing the cool earth of their bamboo house, and knelt by the hearth. Her hands, worn by years of labor, fed twigs to the fire, coaxing flames that danced like fragile vows. A pot of rice porridge simmered, its warmth a quiet promise for her daughter Han, who lay under a quilt, her small form restless from a cough that lingered like dew. Tien, her husband, moved outside, his silhouette steady against the gray light, his hands already reaching for the grapefruit trees. The day unfolded, bright with possibility, yet Lytuca's heart held a delicate pulse, as if testing the weight of joy reborn. Their home nestled on a slope, its bamboo walls weathered by rain and time, a frail refuge woven into the mountain's embrace. Each morning Lytuca gathered eggs, tended chickens, or walked the market trail, her steps sure on paths worn deep by years. Tien worked the groves, his hands deft among the grapefruit trees, their fruit a golden promise sold for 6 million dong, a sum that felt like wings for a family tethered to the hills. Han, barely 3, trailed them, her laughter a spark when coughs didn't steal her breath, her tiny hands eager for the world's colors. Lytuca watched her, a smile softening her lips, but her eyes carried shadows, memories of lean seasons, of Han's cries unanswered, of days when the mountain felt too vast. Those years had carved her, a stone smoothed by a river's patient flow, her strength a quiet fire beneath her weathered skin. That morning the air was cool, the hills draped in fog like a lover's scarf. Lytuca moved gently, her hands checking Han's brow, its warmth a faint echo of last night's worry. Han slept, her breath uneven, her quilt tangled from restless dreams. Lytuca stood, her gaze lingering, her heart a tangle of relief and fear. Outside, Tien climbed the grapefruit trees, his movements sure, the branches bending under his weight. The scent of citrus rose, sharp and sweet, and Lytuca felt it stir something deep. A hope that life, like the fruit, could ripen after hardship. She stepped into the yard, Han in her arms, her voice soft. "Ripe ones?" she asked, her eyes meeting his, searching for the man who'd carried her dreams through years of toil. "Plenty," Tien said, his voice warm, a grin breaking through his sweat. "Hold Han, I'll pick." She nodded, her arms tightening around Han. "Be careful, Tien. The branches are high." He laughed, his eyes crinkling. "I broke a buffalo's horn at 17. This is nothing." Lytuca sat, Han's weight warm against her, her thoughts drifting. She thought of their struggles, years of hauling baskets on foot, of market trails slick with rain, of Han's coughs that pierced the night. She thought of the 6 million dong, a fragile bridge to a dream, a motorbike, a machine to carry them beyond the mountain's grip. Her heart wavered, torn between joy and caution. She'd carried this life alone through seasons of want, her hands steady, but now with this hope she felt both anchored and adrift, as if learning again how to dream with him. The mountain was home, its streams, its trails, its stubborn earth, but it had been a heavy cradle, its paths too steep for their weary feet. The sun climbed, its warmth piercing the fog. Lytuca peeled a grapefruit, its juice sharp on her fingers, and offered a piece to Han. The girl's eyes lit, her cough softening, her giggle a bell as she chewed. Tien descended, his basket heavy, the fruit glowing gold under the light. "Try it," he said, tossing her a wedge, his smile boyish as if testing a memory. Lytuca took it, her lips curving, the sweetness bursting against her tongue, a surprise that felt like grace. "Good for selling," she said, her voice light. "Or eating with Han." He laughed, his hand brushing Han's hair. "Sell enough, we'll ride that bike, Tuca." They worked, their hands moving as one, the grove a canvas of their shared hope. Tien picked, his movement steady despite the ache in his frame, while Lytuca gathered, the basket cool against her hip. Han played, her pebbles scattered, her voice a soft hum as she chased a chick. Lytuca paused, her hands still, her heart catching at the sight, her family whole and laughing, under a sky that felt kinder today. She saw it, the weight of years in Tien's shoulders, the nights of Han's cough in his eyes, but she saw too his resolve, a fire rekindled by home. Her own heart wavered, torn between the joy of this moment and the fear that it might slip, like fruit from a high branch. They ate under the eaves, rice and grapefruit warmed by the hearth. Han nestled between them. Tien spoke, his voice low, of the market's promise, fruit to sell, a bike to buy, a future stitched from small gains. "We'll make it work," he said, his eyes meeting hers, a vow unspoken. Lytuca nodded, her throat tight, her fingers tracing the bowl's rim. She thought of their past, a wound now scabbed but tender, and of this moment, a light that both warmed and unsettled her. She thought of Han, her daughter's life, a thread they both held, and of herself, balancing love with the fear of dreams unkept. The grapefruit sweetness lingered on her tongue, a reminder of what they'd earned, and what they still might lose. The day waned, the sun dipping, casting long shadows over the hills. Lytuca carried Han, her steps light, the market trail winding before them. The village hummed, voices calling, the air thick with spice and dust. They sold their grapefruit, the coins heavy in her pouch, Han's cough a faint echo under the chatter. A vendor's jest caught her ear. Talk of bikes, of freedom on wheels, and her chest tightened, a spark brushing her calm. She glanced at Tien, his smile steady, his hand warm in hers, and felt the dream take root, fragile but fierce. The 6 million dong, once a distant hope, now weighed real in her hands, a key to a life less bound by the mountain's steep paths. They walked to the shop, a small shed under a tamarind tree, its shelves lined with bikes that gleamed like promises. The owner, a man with kind eyes, offered tea, his voice calm as he showed them a wave, its frame sturdy, its gears tuned for the hills. "Strong enough for your mountain," he said, his hands tracing the sprockets. Tien tested it, the engines hum a song that stirred the air. Lytuca watched, Han in her arms, her heart racing. She thought of the trails they'd walked, heavy with baskets and time, and of the 6 million dong, a sum that felt both vast and fleeting. Her fingers brushed Han's hair, her cough now faint, her warmth a tether to the present. "Papers are good," the owner said, his pen steady. "1-year warranty, no trouble." Tien nodded, his jaw set. "We'll take it." Lytuca counted the coins, her hands trembling, the weight of their dream now metal and rubber, real under the sun. They signed, the papers crisp under their fingers, the bike theirs with a final nod. Han clapped, her giggle a spark, and Lytuca felt a rush, joy and fear entwined, as if the earth had shifted beneath her. Tien mounted the bike, his hands sure, and she climbed behind, Han warm between them. The engine roared, the wind sharp against her cheeks, and the mountain opened before them, its trails no longer a cage. They stopped for helmets, the shop bright with colors, Han's eyes wide as she chose a red one, her laughter a melody that drowned the day's weight. Lytuca held her close, her heart full, yet a quiet ache lingered, for the years of want, for the cough that still shadowed Han's breath. The ride home was a revelation, the bike steady on the steep paths, the groves blurring past like a dream. Lytuca clung to Tien, Han's warmth a spark against her chest, the wind carrying their laughter. She thought of the market trails, once endless under her feet, now tamed by wheels. She thought of Tien, his hands steady on the handlebars, his resolve a light that pierced the years of struggle. Her own heart wavered, torn between the freedom of this moment and the fear that it might not hold. She'd carried this life through hunger and cold, her hands steady, but now with this bike, she felt both anchored and adrift, as if learning again how to trust the road ahead. Dusk fell, the sky bruising purple, a crescent moon rising over the hills. Lytuca lit the hearth, the flames casting warmth across the room. She stirred a pot, the green scent mingling with smoke, her thoughts turning inward. She hadn't counted the hours since the bike's hum filled their lives, hadn't marked the moments of freedom reclaimed. Her life was a rhythm. Fire, food, Han's laughter, the mountain's embrace. Yet beneath it a question stirred. Could this joy endure, or would the trails still claim them as they had before? She fed Han, her small hands eager, her cough gone, but Lytuca's heart lingered on the fragility of dreams. Milan, the grandmother, arrived, her steps slow, her arms open for Han. She'd come to share the evening, her presence a quiet thread in their patchwork life, her eyes carrying memories of their struggles, of Lytuca's endurance. They shared tea, their silence warm, the past a shadow that lingered but didn't speak. Lytuca watched Milan cradle Han, her heart full, yet a quiet ache persisted, for the years that had tested them, for the cough that still shadowed Han's breath. She thought of the bike parked outside, its frame a promise of easier days, and of their dreams small but fierce like embers under ash. Night deepened, the moon's glow spilling through the door, touching the bamboo walls, the quilt where Han slept, the mat where a Sin rested, his breath steady but heavy. Lytieuca stepped outside, the air cool, the stars sharp against the dark. The mountain loomed, its silence vast, the valley hidden beyond its folds. She gazed down the path they'd ridden, the bike's tracks faint in the dust, her heart a fragile bridge between triumph and uncertainty. The bike was theirs, a dream made real, yet the years of want had left echoes, doubts that whispered in the quiet, fears that Han's laughter might not drown them. She thought of the grove, its fruit a seed of their future, and of their dreams small but stubborn like roots breaking stone. She lingered, the scent of earth and citrus wrapping her, the stream's murmur faint in the distance. The stars held no answers, only light, and Lytieuca let the stillness hold her, a breath before dawn's demands. Tomorrow she'd rise, gather eggs, ride the bike to market, her steps sure despite the weight. Han would laugh, the groves would yield, and life would unfold, patient as the hills. But in her soul a question lingered, delicate as moonlight. Would this freedom last, or would it slip, like mist through bamboo, leaving only traces to hold? Somewhere in the valley's hush, their future waited, and here on the mountain, her family breathed, a fragile circle of love and hope, its edges softened by a sky too vast to promise forever.